Leaders, real life leaders.
You got to have a vision. If you don't have a vision to give people of where they can go and where the company can go together, you're not going to retain them.
Hey guys, welcome to the Real Life Leadership Podcast, where we share real life stories from real life leaders to help you become a better leader in your organization. And today's guest is one of my amazing friends I love, love, love. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's the host of the Real Estate Rockstar Radio, and which is one of our favorite podcasts to listen to. I think it's like number one, isn't it, Pat?
Yeah, it depends what you look at, but yeah, we're definitely I believe we're the number one podcast
for real estate, right?
Yeah.
But he has made millions in the real estate world, leading a team of 50 people. But now he's super passionate about training and mentoring and just pouring into other people. And that's what I love about Pat so much, is that he's always like, how do I grow people to take them to the next level? And that's what this show's all about. So welcome.
Thanks, man. Fun to be here.
Yeah. And we also have our co-host, Heather Rimmick here. Welcome, Heather.
Welcome. And I just have to say real quick, Chantel, your hair is exceptionally large today. It's very nice. And, we're talking about retention. That might quite drive some people away. So we're going to have to bring that down a notch.
Hey, speaking of retention, Heather, you've been with Chantel a long time. I can remember meeting you like 15 years ago or something, right?
Yes, I have. I've been with her since almost the beginning.
Yeah.
How long have you been with her?
It'll be 10 years next month.
Wow, that's awesome. That's
we've only been in business 12 years. So
yeah.
Well, we should be interviewing you then.
That's right.
What made you stay? You know what I mean? What retained Heather?
That's a really good question. The thing that I love most about this company is opportunities for growth. And, I started as like a $10 hour an employee. I was an admin when I first came on. And I literally got to do almost every single job in the company and just continue to grow. Like whenever I felt like I had hit a ceiling, Chantel was like, oh, I've created this new position. Learn it, grow it, do it. And then I've just been able to grow. And it's leadership. I mean, Chantel does an exceptional job growing us as leaders. And that's just there. I've never even thought of looking somewhere else. I mean, there's just so many opportunities in this company. I've just loved working here. And I've always felt appreciated and wanted. So that's just my...
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to be talking about retention and keeping the right people around, right? Because if you're not doing what you need to do, you don't want to keep those people. You want to keep the right people around. And when it comes to real estate, Pat, I know you know this, but the studies out there are staggering. They say that 75% of brand new agents will not make it. So that's 75% turnover, and 35% of seasoned agents will move. It doesn't matter how great the company is. You could have the best one ever, but 35% of those agents are going to turn over. So that's staggering. So why
35%? I'm surprised that number's not more. I've been at 4 different brokerages, and then if you include my own company that I had, that's 5. Now that's over almost a 30-year period, but yeah, I mean, there's always an Avis, there's always someone who's willing to try harder, you know what I mean? And come up and get in the agent's face and, try to
something new. We'll give you 10% higher, right?
Especially today more than ever.
Yes.
There is a war between brokers. More than any time in history, there's a war between brokers fighting for agents.
You're right. And so actually, if you take that combination of the two, so if you take the 75% of new people and 35%, so that means if you had 50% of your agents start at the beginning of January, if 50% of your agents were brand new January 1 and 50% were seasoned, what it's saying is 75% of those new agents and 35%. So if you combine the two of them, that's talking about more like I should know this off the top of my head because I'm a math major, but about 45%. That's
worse than an internet lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. So, why do you think in real estate the turnover across the country is so awful?
Well, okay. So first of all, it's a two-part question. First of all, let's talk about the turnover of new agents, and then we're going to talk about the agents going from brokerage to brokerage. Sound good? So the
Yeah.
turnover of new agents is because it seems like an easy job and it's hard as hell. I mean, you really get, you really get your head kicked in as an agent. And the rejection isn't like the rejection you might get working in a retail store where you say, is there anything I can help you with? And someone says, no, I'm just looking. It's not that sort of rejection, right? It's the rejection of, man, I showed you 15 houses and then you bought a house at an open house from an agent you never even met before. And I just lost $6,000 of money that I was counting on. It's like really, really strong upsets. And I think that really drives people away. Also, I think that agents get in this business thinking that they're not going to have to be quote unquote salesman-y, that they're not going to have to be aggressive in their prospecting, and everybody is just going to know that they're an agent and automatically come to them because one time they mentioned at church that they got their real estate license. And the fact of the matter is that it just doesn't happen, and then you just quit. It's just, I guess the bottom line to the first part of the question is harder than everyone thinks. And then the second part of the question is, why do agents move? This is interesting. Why do agents move? There's a couple of reasons is what I found. The first reason and the easiest reason to talk about, let's say, and it's not why everyone moves, is economics, right? I mean, there's an economic play. First 25 years ago, Remax invented, I wouldn't say invented, Remax was the first one to come out with on a large scale, a different economic model. And they went to the 100% split because everybody was at 50-50 or something up until then. So they really scratched the record. Now they've changed since then, but nonetheless, my point is that Remax came out with an economic model that was attractive to top producers 25 years ago. Now, since then, you've had all kinds of different economic models pop up. Right now, especially, you have a lot of companies that are like, all you got to do is pay us a flat fee per transaction. All you got to do is pay us a flat fee every month, that sort of thing. And those are economic reasons why people would move. And of course, the age-old economic reason is, hey, you're on a 60-40 split with this company, I'll give you a 70-30. I mean, that's basically just going tit for tat on money, which can be done.
And I think it's also about leadership, though. It's that maybe the manager of that office, they didn't feel like they were helping them grow and take them to another level. That's another piece of the puzzle.
That's a great point. Because I felt like that.
Yeah.
I hope
because
all
you
my
need
past
a
managers
leader.
are listening. Yeah.
Yeah, but you want a leader that's going to take you to the next level. And as soon as you start feeling like this guy doesn't care about taking me to the next level, they're not pushing me and driving me. I had a personal trainer that I had a while back, and he was, every time I'd complain like my knee hurt or this, he's like, oh, let's not do lunges, let's not do squats. He wasn't pushing me at all. And guess what? I was like, okay, I'm going to find another trainer. Why? I loved him, thought he was the nicest guy. But people need to feel like they're being pushed and they want to grow. And so if there's anything the manager's doing to make them feel like they're not taking them to the next level, that's another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what do you guys think is the difference in managing and retaining independent contractors versus managing and retaining salaried employees? Because, people listening here, they've got some people who are salaried employees, they've got people who are independent contractors, and they're totally two different beasts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead. You talk, Heather.
Oh, that's okay. Well, one is required to come to work to get paid. So you have to I mean, they're coming. So
They can get fired.
they can get fired, and the other ones don't necessarily have to come in. Like they don't have as many guidelines. So you have to, the people that are independent contractors have to find value in you, in your company. And whether that value is economic or growth, everyone has different reasons. There are some people who are very highly economic driven, and we do this test when they first come in, and we want to find out what are their drivers. So are they a 99 out of 100 on the economic scale? Then we know when we talk to them and when we give them different programs or incentives, they're going to be motivated by money. And so if we want to keep them, we have to continually find ways to help them make more and more and more money. There's some people who are only motivated by growth in the company, growth in positions, growth in their leadership. And so throwing bonuses in front of them is not going to motivate them at all. And so you have to find the different ways to manage them. And then salaried employees are just a whole different beast. I mean, they come in every day and you're paying them, to do a certain task and work certain hours, and finding ways to appreciate them while not just appreciating them for doing what we're already paying them for, but appreciating them for doing them different, being a good employee, are two different kind of ways you have to kind of look at that.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
what do you think is the biggest mistake that you've made, Pat, or that you've seen other people when it comes to retention? Like you were like, I knew this guy, or even for you personally, you're like, we lost a couple agents because we did X, Y, Z. What was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the answer to that question is easy. It's vision. Like there was a time where I lost my vision, right? Like when the market started getting crooked, and I was emotionally lost in vision. So like, for years I had a vision. Okay, we're going to do this much. This is going to happen. We're going to storm the enemy. You know what I mean? We're going, Yahoo. And I had this vision and people followed my vision and it was awesome. But as soon as I lost my vision, like I didn't care anymore. I was kind of, wondering if I should get out of the business, wondering if I should, getting to the point where I'm like, I'm wasting my time because I'm working all these hours and I'm not making any money. As soon as the people caught wind of that, especially the agents, they left, they rolled out because they're like, I want to go to the guy or the girl that has a vision, even if that vision was delusional or that vision didn't come to pass because of the market, which is exactly what happened. There were other teams and companies out there where the leader had a vision. He or she was like, yeah, we're gonna do this, and we got to do this every day, and you know what I mean, and energized and optimistic. And the market still sucked, but they went to that person because they had a vision, and I had lost my vision. So I would say that you got to have a vision. If you don't have a vision to give people of where they can go and where the company can go together, you're not going to retain them.
Mm. Yeah, for me personally, this was quite a few years back, probably like, I don't know, 7 years ago. I realized our commission splits were they were just too high. And so I had changed them and I had reduced them down. And as soon as you reduce your commission splits, it was like, mass exodus.
Yeah,
and
you
so
can't take away money from people.
You can't do it. And so that was probably the biggest mistake I ever made. But then we went back and increased them and, that sort of thing. And we have different plans. And we finally have, I think, a great recipe for our commission plans. But that was hands down the biggest mistake I ever made. And in my opinion, if you're going to make a big change like that, you need to grandfather the people in that are already there. And so that's one of the big leadership rules we've done is like, if we're going to make any kind of big changes that isn't beneficial, you grandfather the people in and only move forward with any new people that come in place.
Yeah, that happens all the time. You can't, people, there's an old saying like people will work harder to keep someone from stealing their money than they will work to try to earn their money. you know, and so whenever you pull money away from people psychologically, it it causes post-traumatic stress. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They can't get over that. You know, it causes anger. You just can't do that. So it's just something you need to keep in mind when you're, beginning something. And like Stephen Covey says in the, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, always begin with the end in mind. Begin with the fact that begin with the vision that you're going to have 100 agents. And when you have 100 agents, are you going to want them all on 90-10 splits? You got to begin conservatively from day one. And I know a lot of teams
Yes.
out there, and a lot of them come on the show that, unfortunately, the agents are making more profit than the broker or the team leader.
Right.
And they just began with a
Too
vision. They
high.
began, too high. Yeah.
That's so true. Because you can always give more. We've actually increased our commission splits several times and created different plans and created like 100% plan for those agents who are, more independent. They want to do their own brand, that sort of thing. But you can always increase the amount of money, but you can never, ever go down. So can you tell a story where you felt like, man, if I made a mistake one time, but I now have really learned from it, and this is how I've done things different on appreciating people and really valuing them and making sure that they really feel appreciated.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, the best way to appreciate people is to turn off your phone or leave it on your desk in a drawer or something and go around and talk to people one-on-one about their kids or about, their pictures that they have posted up or whatever, how's it going? Right. I mean, all that, as much as you can, right? That is so important because employees.
But I think also, hold on, I'm going to add to what you're saying. So, but also within that is to talk to them about what you do appreciate about them. So not just hearing about what's going on in their life, but that one-on-one conversation saying, Pat, you know what I love about you? I absolutely love that you really genuinely care about me growing to the next level. And I really feel that with you. And the way that I feel that is because, the podcast that you do, you give out so much free content, just going through very, very specifically. But keep going.
Yeah. Leave with a gift. I think that, I mean, my advice would be to engage in conversation to show that you care. But then leave with a gift, like you said, and give them some assertive appreciation when you leave. I think if you start with that, it comes off too superficial. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Chantel, she just goes around and lobs these cliches. You know what I mean? But yeah. So so back to my mistake. So one of the things I did in trying to retain people is I created like a board of directors on my team where like I took like the top person from marketing, the top buyer agent, the top listing agent, and created a board of directors of like 6 people. And we met every week and discussed what was going on. And that was a great retention tool for the top people. It kind of backfired on the people underneath because they began to resent them, right? Because they would go back to their departments and they would see them as normal people, but then they'd say, oh, well, they're in that room making these decisions. And unfortunately, some of the decisions we made were negative decisions, like this person needed to be fired or reprimanded or whatever. So it became almost like we would meet. And the purpose of the meeting was a witch hunt, like who's screwing up.
Oh my gosh, I love this story. This is hysterical.
Yeah, it's true. Rather than like, what's right, what's going right, it was what's going wrong and how can we fix it? And it became this constant solution-oriented meeting, which on the surface sounds good, but it was bad. And so what happened was, to give a specific example, I had a mother-daughter team that worked for me, and one was a client care. The daughter was a client care coordinator, and the mom was in a managerial position. And So the mom had been with me like 8 years. She was very, very, very valuable, right? She was like one of the best I had. And her daughter was young and she was new, and I guess she had been messing up. I didn't see it firsthand because she, there was 50 people, so I didn't really, know whether she was doing a good job or not. But some of the board of directors were complaining about her. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I would have like sat her down and talked to her myself and then moved her to a different position or just found a way. I mean, she was a $35,000 employee. It wasn't like we couldn't afford to like move her to a different department or find something better for her or different, but instead what we did is we fired her. And it was really
And
stupid.
then did the mom leave? Then the mom left, right?
Within a couple of months, the mom left to our biggest competitor. And when I talked to the mom in an exit interview, I was like, "You've been with me 8 years," and she goes, "Well, I my motherly instinct, I just couldn't, I couldn't stay." And in hindsight, I respect her for that. Like if I worked at a company and someone with my daughter and someone fired my daughter, I'd probably leave too. I'd be like, "Well, that was mean," or that was, it's just hard. It was just almost an impossible feat for her to stay because of what happened to her daughter. And you're either going to not hire relatives like that, or if you fire them, it almost should be an egregious thing. Like if she came in high on crystal meth, then you could be like, well, we have no choice. But if it's just she's not working out in a certain department, I think I would have been better off moving her to another department, and just, it's just alienating. Your employees and your team build a community with or without you. And you just can't go around.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
That's actually a very powerful statement, what you just said right there.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And I think also you tend to have people, and you really have to watch personalities. You tend to have people that get a little power hungry if you give them power. And I noticed there's certain personalities, and I don't know if this exists everywhere, but in my life, I've seen this exist more than once. Let's say 3 times with people that either agents or staff or just people that I know personally in my family and friends who create what I call an enemy of the month. It's like they have to have someone that they're complaining about.
That is hysterical.
At all
the
times.
enemy of the month club.
Enemy of the month. And they'll have this enemy of the month and they'll complain about the person until they're fired, right? or until they they get a new enemy of the month. And it's funny, if you start paying attention to this, you'll be like, who was she mad about last month, and who is she mad about this month, and who is she mad about next month? And you'll realize that it's a pattern in some people that they have to have a nemesis in order for them to exist. Now tell me, have you seen this at all?
Yes. I'm laughing hysterically because I'm thinking about one person in general that I'm thinking about. I'm going to have our staff all listen to this podcast, but that is hysterical. So what are some more practical ways, either of you, that you feel like you can make your team members feel very valued and important? Tell a story about it that's very specific.
Well, I think that you have to the first step above all else is find out how they're appreciated, because everyone is appreciated in different ways. Not everybody's motivated by a bonus. Not everybody's motivated by public recognition. And so, for instance, I think getting to know your staff or independent contractors when they first come on is really important. So finding out what's their favorite restaurant, finding out what's their favorite drink, finding out what's their favorite flower, because something as small as, so we have someone on our team that loves Chick-fil-A. Like, he just loves Chick-fil-A. And if you don't know that about him, you can be appreciating. You could give him a Starbucks gift card. You could give him, here's a Whole Foods gift
And
card, whatever
he
it is.
doesn't like Starbucks.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't like Starbucks. So you're giving him a $5 Starbucks gift card, and he doesn't even like it. But of course he's going to say, oh, thank you.
Right. He's like, thanks. And he's like, oh, great. What am I going to use this for? So I've recognized that he loves Chick-fil-A. I see him eat it all the time. And, I think I had a conversation with him one time that I was like, where do you love? And he's like, oh, I just love Chick-fil-A. So even if I'm like doing a staff appreciation day and I'm just picking up, most people love Starbucks. You give him a $5 Starbucks card. I always make sure that I pick him up a Chick-fil-A gift card and when I give that to him, it means so much to him because it's the same amount. It's this little amount of anything, but because he knows I took special attention to the fact that he loves Chick-fil-A and I went out of my way to buy him a Chick-fil-A gift card versus a Starbucks gift card, it increases their morale. It just means so much more to them. So I think first you have to figure out what motivates them and what makes them feel appreciated. And I think that should be part of your onboarding process, is just kind of like we talked about, having them fill out a sheet. Like, what's your favorite flower? What's your favorite drink? What's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite whatever? And kind of going from there.
Well, and I think another big one is, Pat, have you read the book, the 5 Love Languages? Have you read that?
Yeah. One of my favorite books on relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is really important because we have a guy on our corporate team. His name's Daniel, and he's absolutely fantastic. And what makes him feel the best is words of affirmation. So like, even though he may love Chipotle, me buying him Chipotle gift cards, that's not filling his love tank. And so you've got to figure out what is their love language, because if words of affirmation is it, then buying them a gift, if number 5 is his gifts and you're buying him a gift every day, that's not the way to go.
Yeah, and I think you could even get around even having to read that book as a team. I think there's a link, I don't have it, but there's a link, from the book that you go online and take the test. It's like a 20-question test, and you can just make everybody take that test online, and it'll tell you their love languages, their top 2, kind of like their DISC score,
Right.
Yeah, and you don't even really need to even read the book, because at the end of the day, it's so basic. It's like, hey, there is 5 love languages. One's receiving gifts, one's words of affirmation, one's physical touch, one's quality time, and one's acts of service. We'll put that link in the show notes for everyone that they can look, and it'll give a description. What's your love language, Pat?
Yeah.
Like, if you had to rate them 1, 2, 3, what would be yours?
So I think mine came out to be words of affirmation and quality time.
Okay, gotcha. Heather, what's yours?
Mine is, well, for my husband, it's gifts. Like, he should be giving me gifts regularly. That makes me happy. But I would say acts of service too. I love when people do something for me. Like, I think that's just really special. Like when somebody goes out of their way to do something, that really means a lot to me. And then words of affirmation would be my other one.
See, and this is a great example because, right, like we assume that people have the same love languages as us, but here Heather and I have absolutely different love language. I could care less if someone does me a favor, you know what I mean, or someone gives me a gift. I'm like, what am I going to do with that? It's just going to take up space. You know what I mean? But it means so much to her. You know what I mean? So you just can't assume. You need to really have people take the test or ask them, or else you're going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about when a team member leaves, because I've seen, right now, this past month, we've had 3 agents that left our company and then they came back. And, so there's a really important thing about just not burning any bridges. Any advice on that? And have you seen anyone burn bridges that have this is what they did and it turned out a disaster, no one would ever come back? Or any scripts that you could say to people when they are leaving that makes them want to come back? Because a lot of people think the grass is greener on the other side, and then they realize, oh my gosh, it's not. And you want that door to be left open.
Yeah, it's so hard because I think the natural reaction is to be like, oh my God, you're making a mistake. You don't understand. And then
the second natural reaction is to take it personal as a manager or as a team leader or whatever. You know, I know a guy who recently had, like a couple days ago, had someone leave him after 18 years. And the way he handled it is the guy sat down with him and said, "Hey, you know, I'm leaving you. I want to talk to you about why. You know, just so you know, and I can leave on a good term." And he pushed his chair back and walked out of the room. The guy that owned
Wow.
the guy that owned the company. So, you know, it's clearly that dude ain't coming back. You know, you know. And I think the best thing to do is to be like you said, just to, you know, say, first of all, yeah, you have to ask them why, because they may not understand. Like, you know, I've had people try to leave for economic reasons or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, I can go here and the split is this." And I said, "Okay, well, no, that's not right. Their split is actually that plus a franchise fee is 6% or 8%. And they're like, no, I'm on a 70-30 split there, or 80-20. Like, no, you're not. You're on an 80-20 plus a 7% franchise fee. So you're on a 73-27. And they're like, wait, no. And I'm like, dude, look, show me the paperwork. Look, you know, so you have to, you do need to talk it out and make sure that they're clear on what they're doing, and try to retain them. And sometimes it takes, giving them something better. I mean, it's the American way, right? If you really appreciate somebody, you don't want them to leave, you give them a freaking raise, or you give them an offer they can't understand. Now, the other way, if that doesn't work, then, and if you can't do that, or you want to set a precedent, like nobody gets a deal at this company, then you got to let them go. And then hope that they come back. But yeah, like I have people that have left me and still consider me a mentor of sorts, and still would, you know what I mean? I always said, hey, best of luck to you, because I can remember the second company that I left in my career held all of my listings. And it was only like 5, but they meant a lot to me. You know, I was like in the business like 4 years. So I had 5 listings, and they held them. And they gave them to another agent. And then they gave me a reduced commission, because they gave half to another agent. And, that was just dirty. They didn't need to do that, And
yeah, that's a really good point. So I'm going to recap what you said. And I think that you're exactly right. Step number 1, when they say they're leaving, is first to say, hey, I'm so sad that you're leaving. Question number 1 is why. I just want to understand, will you share with me why? Question number 2 should be, is there anything we can do differently? Have you already made up your mind, or is there something we can offer you or change or do differently? And then the third piece of that is really saying, listen, we absolutely love you, and we want you to know the door is open. If at any time, and that's why we've had 3 people come back, because we ended the conversation that says, is there, we're holding the door wide open for you. We want nothing but success for you, but if it doesn't work out there, we want you back. And the other piece is what you just said. So we, as a company, when somebody leaves, we do not take any additional money from the agent. So let me explain how we do it. So let's just say an agent's on a 70-30 split. The company will never make more than 30%. However, if you move to Arkansas and you can't finish out the transaction, we'll say you've got to negotiate something with another agent to finish that deal out and give 10%. And
what if they don't move to Arkansas? What if they stay in Virginia?
If they stay, then they can go ahead and still work that deal, right? They can finish out the transaction. As long as they still finish out the transaction and they're doing everything for it, they get all of it. Or they could say, look, I'll give you 5% to do this, and this, or 10%, but the company doesn't make any more than they ever did. So it's only you're making that decision. And then what we do with listings is we say we charge a small fee because we pay for the pictures and the signs and the, so we charge a couple $100. You can take the listing if it's yours, to, as far as, just to cover the cost we've already spent on it. And people are fine with that.
Cool.
Heather, any thoughts on that?
Well, I have an example of a time when somebody's left and they burnt the bridge. Like, they begged to come back like 2 weeks later, and we were like, no. So we had, it's been probably 5-7 years ago, I would say. We had two friends that were we had two transaction coordinators.
That was like 9 years
ago. Was it 9?
That
okay,
was like
so it was a
9
long
years
time.
ago.
Yeah. And so they were admin for us. And we had just they wanted to go to this concert, so we called the concert promoters and we got them concert tickets. We had done an admin appreciation, and we gave each of them a shopping spree at the mall, $200. Go to the mall, buy clothes, whatever you want to do. Thank you for being you. Admin appreciation day, da da da. And we're loving on them, and we wake up, and at midnight they send an email that's this is our resignation. We quit effectively, right now. We're not coming in anymore. And we were like, what in the world has happened? And so basically they were you don't appreciate us in your day-to-day tasks. So yeah, thanks for all those other things you did, but we don't feel like you appreciate us. And we were just dumbfounded. We were like, what in the world?
Because we just finished. It was we were doing this huge appreciation campaign. Like she said, they did the shopping spree and the concerts, and we were again, but we must not have been saying it with our mouths. We were giving them gifts.
Yes.
Wrong
we
love
weren't
language.
saying
Wrong
love language.
Yes.
And we
So
were dumbfounded. We were like, what? You don't feel appreciated?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We've
so
given
we learned
you so much.
Yeah, we learned our lesson from that we needed to figure out how to appreciate them, but they weren't coming back. You don't do that. That was not the correct way to leave a company.
The funny thing is, at least 3 or 4 more times they begged to come back, but because they left, they didn't give us any notice. They quit that day.
Yeah, that's just dirty,
No, we don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we learned our lesson, and they must probably learned theirs.
So we recently had Toby Harris from Movement Mortgage on the show, and if you haven't listened to that episode, that's a really good one. But we were talking about having tough conversations up front, and he said something really profound. He said, we found that if we have more upfront conversations, that we will have fewer tough conversations later. So I think this has a lot to do with retention. And I think what happens is when people start off, they're like, oh my God, this is the best place. They don't tell them any of those more upfront conversations that need to have. Can you talk about that, Pat? Is there anything that you go, hey, I wish I would have told people A, B, C before they started because they came in with a wrong expectation?
Yeah, that's a good one. How do you deal with that? Well, I think you deal with it to make sure that the ramp up process is crystal clear. Unfortunately, for the office manager, for Heather or what have you, she would need to sit down with them and go through the policy and procedure manual, go through everything. Just don't assume people are gonna, read everything and pick it up. And let it kind of paint a worst case scenario before they accept the job of this is what could happen. This is the bad side of this job. So you're not overselling them. You almost want to undersell them.
Yes. I love that. Heather, any advice on that?
One of the things I think that we do really well that I think helps with that is we do a 3-day trial. So we do a trial before someone actually accepts the position.
Now, this is for employees only,
for
not
employees
agents.
only.
I love this idea.
Yeah, and so that way, the last thing we want someone to do is think a job is one thing, quit their really awesome job they've loved for so many years, and then come and on day one be like, oh crap, this is not what I thought I was getting into. So we have them do this trial ahead of time so they can see who they're going to be working with, see what our expectations are, what it's like to work with us, see our environment, And we get to see how they are in our environment, because sometimes we're like, oh, this was not the right person. Let's not move forward. But I think that helps set those expectations up from the beginning so that they kind of know before they accept the job offer what it's like being in our environment, and if we think they're a good fit for our environment, because we want people who are fun and like just really add to us and add to our culture and grow. And so we can kind of see that in those first couple of days before they officially accept a job offer.
So
I think
we
that
have
helps.
we have a job position that is just like your team leader, Pat, at Keller Williams. We have a managing partner position. It's similar to the team leader. And we've had people who were like, we say now recruiting is the hardest part of your position. And they might be coming from, let's say, Verizon or another company. And they're like, oh, that's my favorite part of the job is recruiting. And we say, wait, let me stop you right there, because recruiting a salaried person is a whole new ball game than somebody who's a licensed agent. And we basically say, let me tell you how hard it is. This is some of the objections you're going to get. This is why it's so hard for an agent to move, and bringing those kind of worst case scenarios, like you said.
Absolutely.
So I've heard this a lot, and it's really true that most of the time people will not leave because of more money, more benefits. They really leave because of the leader. And what do you think that you can do as a leader to make it where the people want to stay? Like they're like, I don't care if I'm getting $10,000 more at this other company. I don't care if I'm getting a higher split. This leader is why I'm going to stay here at this company.
Yeah. Two words come to mind. First is respected, and second is liked. And of course, I guess the third would be appreciative of me, so respected, meaning, you really can't be a false prophet. You know what I mean? You can't expect something out of your employees or your team and then not do it yourself. You know what I mean? Or just you don't want to give people stuff to gossip about you. And the second thing is, so that's respected, right? And again, it goes back to what you said about people want to work for someone else that they can look up to, right? Someone else that it can do it or has done it and has a vision of how I can do it and, be like them. So that's respected. Then liked, you just can't be a jerk. You just can't be rude. You can't be short. I looking back on my career, the people in the office used to have a joke that was like, don't make eye contact with Pat.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical.
Because
why would they say that?
Because they would know that I would give them something to do. Like sometimes the roles aren't defined enough. So you're like wandering around like, who can get this done the fastest? And there's like 4 people that can get it done fast, and you don't know which one to give it to. And then whoever makes eye contact, you're like, hey, can you do me a favor? So they used to have that.
So you're saying if they make eye contact, they must have time to even just make eye contact?
Yeah.
You've got extra time. I'm going to give you another project.
Yeah, I'm not going to interrupt it. I'm not going to interrupt them. So you need to have some sort of system or some sort of, policy and procedure on for projects, or just have someone that's a project person, so that's kind of goes into being liked. You need to, they need to like you, they need to feel like, you have their best interest at heart. You're not greedy. Only looking out for yourself.
But I think it goes back to the other piece that I love, that they need to respect you. They need to like you. But I want to add that other piece. They need to feel like you can grow them. Because back to the example of the trainer, I respected him. I liked him. But I wasn't feeling like he was going to get my body in the shape that I needed it to be. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like he was going to grow me. So that piece is another one. Heather?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I think I realized this like I had an epiphany moment. I was trying to recruit an agent who wasn't producing. Like they're a licensed agent. They may have done like one deal in the last year. And so she was like, yeah, I want to sign on. I see how much you can do. I was like, look how much our company can offer for you. Look at all this. And she would not leave her broker. She just wouldn't. And I said, do you need me to call him? Like, do you want me to break up with him? And she said, I just respect him so much and he's taught me so much. I can't leave him. And although she was making no money, she would have come to our company and probably closed, she was closing one deal a year. She would have easily closed 24 a year with us. But and to this day, she is still with that broker because she loves them and respects them so much that it doesn't matter how much money I could offer her or what, that person meant so much to her that she wouldn't leave them. And so I was like, wow, how do you become a leader that it doesn't matter if somebody is, it doesn't matter what flashy, product they're going to show them on the other side, that they will look at you and say, there's no way, I'm going to leave. Like I can't, personally, I don't know of what anyone could offer me that I would say, yep, that's worth leaving, because I love this company so much. And how do you get your people to feel the same way? And I think it goes right off of what Pat was saying. Like, when the people underneath of me, when I make a promise to them, I uphold it. And I learn to lead them in the way that they need to be led. And people need to be led in different ways. In order to be a really great leader, you have to lead in different ways. Like you can't lead each person. Everyone doesn't go down the same road. People take different paths, and you have to be versatile enough to change, to take each person. You have high performers in your organization, and then you have just entry-level people, and you cannot lead them the same way. They have to be led differently, and you have to morph and transform to lead them. Or they will leave you. If you're one type of leader, they'll leave you.
Mm.
So I've got two more questions, but let me ask you, and this question's going to be kind of really near and dear to my heart, because I feel like I'm going to give you a story. We have an agent, and I've gotten to the point now, we've got 185 agents. So obviously, whoa. Yeah. So when we had 20 agents, my involvement with the agent levels was a lot different than now that we have 185. I don't have that kind of connection. And I feel like there was one agent that we had that I, was personal friends with. I felt like we did so much for them. And, they literally were like, oh my gosh, I love this company. I mean, literally were like, we would never leave. I mean, they were like the kingpin. And then somebody offered them a deal that they felt like they couldn't refuse. And marketing money each month and this and that, and they decided to leave. And so how do you handle that as a leader when you go, man, I feel like I couldn't have done anything different. Like, I don't know what I could have done to make it different, and to not let it affect you, where you just are like, okay, it is what it is. Any tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key is the second part, to not let it affect you. The key is not the first part, because you're going to have any big company has wins and losses, right? I mean, like, you know what I mean? There's people that have 3 agents and one leaves and they're like, whatever, I don't care. And you have 185 and one leaves. Make the difference. You know what I mean? So it really, my point is it's Chantel. It's not really, the universe. So it's, if you have standards and you have, and you have a policy where everybody's on the same pay scale, there's nothing you can do, right? I mean, now if you have a policy that everybody's a little bit different, then that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And certainly I did that in my career, if you wanted to keep them and they were, they were valuable to you, you could figure out ways to add value to them. And that's important too. I think, whenever you have a high achieving person, the way to retain them is to constantly give them more value in the form of opportunities, whether it be like a manager of the other agents where they can get an override, or, a way to become more of a leader, or whatever, taking an agent from a buyer agent to a listing agent, getting them an assistant of their own, you know what I mean? Constantly, or giving them a satellite office to run or whatever. You have to keep throwing those things in front of them or they're going to leave. It's just a natural phenomenon. It's the American way. You know, you get big, you get big and you leave and you do something better. It just is what it is. So I don't think you can get attached. I don't think you should get attached to it. It just is what it is. It's like losing a listing. You're not going to get them all, and you're not going to be able to retain all your agents. And there's always going to be somebody that's going to offer them more, especially nowadays. Man, it's cutthroat out there. So yeah. So and again, it's a love language thing. You know what I mean? You're thinking their love language was, you know, assertive appreciation, and they could care less about assertive appreciation. All they care about is money, right? So, you know, if unless you're running a model at the Chantel Ray Real Estate Group that is, you know, economic driven, right? Like we got the best deal in town, then you just got to let them go.
Mm-hmm. Heather, any thoughts on that?
You know, we're human, so it's going to hurt, especially when you feel like there's an extra connection there, and just, especially when you don't see it coming, when you're like, what, this just blindsided me. Like this person wasn't complaining. They were happy. Everything was grand. And like, all of a sudden you're like, wait, who? But I think it's also important to understand that people do have a shelf life. Not everyone's full of preservatives. Like they don't last forever. And so,
that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So but what you have to understand is they'll have a shelf life there too. And if you continue to have a great relationship with them, when their time runs out there, they're going to come back to you because they know you and they trust you. And that's where you have to kind of just say, okay, it hurts right now, but we're going to continue this relationship. We're going to have a great relationship because I know that they'll end up coming back. And we've seen that.
Maybe, but maybe not. Also,
I mean, they may not.
Like you left William E. Wood, right? And I'm sure he was butthurt because of that.
No, you know what? That's not true, actually. He came to me because I liked him so much. And, you know, I was with him for 7 years. And so I liked him so much. And he came to me and he was like, Chantel, it's time for you to go out on your own. He's like, I love you, but there's not enough room. You've taken over our company. Like, he's like, let's say he had like 5,000 square feet. We were taking up 4,000 of it. He's like, I can't grow because you're growing so fast.
On a high split, he probably wasn't making money on you either.
Yeah, he's like, I love you and I'll support you. And that meant the world to me. And I won't forget that he did that.
So you should be more like him. You know what I mean? Like if someone wants to, it is the American way to work for someone else and then go out on your own. That is how every company starts.
Right, exactly. So how do you challenge and grow yourself, Pat? If you would say, you know, here's like the 5 things that I do to kind of get my leadership up to snuff every day. I'm constantly doing A, B, C, D. What are those things for you?
First, I guess, is read and learn, right? Listen to podcasts like this, right? Because you're never at the pinnacle of leadership, I think. You know what I mean? You're just not. And personalities change. You have different generations that think differently. Like you could have someone who has been an incredible leader for the last 10 years, but all of a sudden, you know, there's a brain dump in that there's no young, smart millennials or tech savvy millennials coming because he or she doesn't get them. You know what I mean? He or she doesn't know how to lead them. And that's just a fact of the matter is, I mean, like Keller Williams just hired like a 37-year-old to run the whole company. You know, so that's just where it's going. You know, you gotta, I think that's a big mistake that people make is they think that that they don't have to grow as leaders, you know, that they have to, that they have to, you know, they can keep doing what they've always done. Yeah. You gotta change. You gotta constantly change as a leader.
Good. Heather?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Pat 100%. You always have to be learning. I mean, you can't get stagnant. When you get stagnant, like it's over. You're done. You move on to the next thing because it's just not going to work anymore. But I think also just being amongst your people, you know, don't get stuck sitting in your office. You need to get out and interact because That's how you see where areas need to be improved and who needs some extra touches and who is doing really fantastic. You won't know the pulse of your culture if you're just sitting in a box. And so, I try to make sure we get up a couple times a day, walk around, how's it going? You can kind of see what's going on in people's lives, because that's how you can steer the ship better when you're actively in it rather than just kind of, laying on the deck sunbathing. Those are my analogies of the day here.
You are bringing the analogies, Heather. I think that, one of the things I say all the time is if you're not changing, you're dying. And, we see that all the time with companies like, Blockbuster, Netflix came in, and the taxi cabs, the Uber came in. And so you can, if you're not growing and changing every single day, the CEO of Blockbuster, Netflix, came to him and said, I want to talk to you about making a deal and doing some changes and adding and partnering together. And the CEO of Blockbuster said, we aren't going anywhere. We are every person's Friday and Saturday night entertainment, and just cocky and arrogant and saying, hey, we're not changing. This is what we're doing. And where's Blockbuster today? And it's because of that CEO. And I think you've got to constantly stay ahead of the curve. One of the things we've done, we've created a group called the Ahead of the Curve. We call them the AOC, and it's called the Ahead of the Curve Club. And we're just constantly going, with an ever-changing market, how do we just continue to stay above and ahead of the curve? So, well, Pat, any last final thoughts on leadership that you want to kind of present to our guests today?
I think we covered some great ground here, and leadership. I think as leaders, you just have to be humble and, totally learning based. And it ties back into what you just said. You're constantly ahead of the curve, learning new things about people, learning new things about personalities and what motivates them. And that's it. Just stay open-minded.
And this podcast is all about leadership. It's targeted to all kinds of different businesses. But I feel like your podcast, even though it is very real estate based, people can get, even if they're not in the real estate industry. So if you're listening right now and you are not in real estate, I would like to encourage you to go check out Pat's podcast, because there's principles in there, even if you're not in real estate, that are going to help you grow and take it to the next level. So tell everyone how they can get to your podcast, Pat.
Absolutely, Chantel, thank you. It's called Real Estate Rockstars, and you just plug it in, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen. I can be found anywhere. Just type my name in. I'm all over social media. And if you want to read my book and you haven't read it, I've been giving out a free copy of my book, which can be found on free6stepsbook.com. And you just go to free and then type out the word six, S-I-X, free6stepsbook.com. All you got to do is pay the shipping. It's a $20 book, and you get it for free. And it's a great way to get to know me and get to know how I went from a zero to hero in a very short period of time as a real estate agent. So feel free to pick that up.
I love it. And it's a fantastic book. You did a really great job on it. So thanks again for being on the show today, Pat. And Heather, as always, it's a pleasure having you on. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Life Leadership. If you'd like to get the show notes or access more resources, log on to reallifeleaders.com/podcast to get the show notes from this episode and any other resources we might have mentioned. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to review or rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word. And if you have any leadership questions you want answered, email podcast@reallifeleaders.com.